Well, there we have it. Another week down here in the Twin Cities. Chased a variety of fish this week. We had another week of phenomenally, for the most part, nice weather. We had a little bit of rain kind of peek through on and off mid to later in the week. Nothing crazy. Some areas near us got hit pretty good. I know Western Wisconsin got dinged with some fun stuff. We saw a little bit of downpour for short periods of time. I'm telling you what, I'm looking out at my grass right now. We definitely didn't get enough rain, but we did get a little bit of moisture, but it was warm, muggy, hot, steamy. If you were anywhere in your backyard this week, you became friends with the mosquitoes. I can promise you that. I think at one point they almost carried off one of my kids. They were so thick back there, welts all over the legs, all sorts of stuff. It's one of the beauties of Minnesota. We always joke that the Minnesota bird should probably be the mosquito. There's so many of them. And this year, for whatever reason, is horrendous. So we've been living outside and we've been using some, bug spray. That's been important. Long sleeve shirts, pants, even when you don't want to. And we've been living inside our quick set screen shelter. Nice setup, easy setup, goes up in 60 seconds, bug free, great way to hang outside and do a picnic in the evening time or whatever you might have. But yeah, mosquitoes, man, I'm just getting sick of them. I've actually got one biting my leg as we speak, believe it or not. Fishing, let's talk fishing. So this week, we are dealing with some spawning patterns, talking bass fishing here. I did not do much anything else. Caught some pike, accidentally targeting bass. Didn't really chase the panfish, although I'm gonna start chasing bluegills. They're starting to really bed up. We're have a shot at some really big ones. Practice selective harvest on these bluegills, please, especially the giant ones that are sitting on their beds of their colonies. One boat of anglers could deplete a pretty important part of what's going on out there in terms of bluegills. So just be selective, be cautious of that kind of stuff. But bass fishing, this is what we really targeted a lot. A lot of fish are still on beds. We're seeing fish sitting on beds. We're also seeing some post spawn stuff. We're seeing some fish slide out into that 5 to 10 foot zone. So you're seeing some anglers start to ask questions. I had a lot of questions this week saying, Matt, I caught them really good over the weekend, shallow. Man, they really started to change and move. My bite kind of turned off. Well, your bite really didn't turn off. You went from a shallow spawn period where these fish are relatively hungry. There's a series of males that move up onto the beds after the females do their thing. Well, now a lot of those fish have moved. They've slid out. They're a little more lethargic. You got to change the way you fish. We've even seen some, I don't want to go as far to say summer patterns, but you're going to see some things we did to catch some fish here the last few days that would make you feel a whole lot like summer. Ned rigs, flipping jigs, that sort of stuff. Caught some fish, swim baits in deeper water, 8, 9, 10, 12 feet. So you're doing some things already. I'm thinking summer patterns, and that's what we oftentimes don't think about, myself included. Okay, it's the first part of June. It's June 4th, right? It's the first part of June, but we got water temps on 2 of the lakes I fished in the last few days in the upper 70s, surface temp. So it's relative. We're talking 76 to 79 degree surface temp. So what these fish can start doing, because they don't understand that it's June 4th, they don't understand it's not summer, technically. They feel what they feel, and that has to do with water temperature. So you're starting to pay attention to some of these variables to start thinking, I need to start targeting these fish deeper. I need to start thinking about where they could school up, stage up, start to move into their summer haunts. We might see a very short post-spawn period, which for me is just fine, because I struggle probably the most at a post-spawn period. They slide into those emergent weeds. It's kind of a clumped up gobbledygook mess. You're going to get the algae bloom. Your jigs are full of junk, but that seems to be the zone these fish are in. The faster they can get out of that zone, the better we're going to do to catch more fish and get into summer patterns. So I'm going to talk about some ways we caught these bass. There were some ways that worked very well. There were some things we did to catch fish. There were some things we did to catch consistently bigger fish too. So I got a variety of setups here. I'm telling you what, some things I don't have present that worked very well this week. Wacky rig. It continues to catch a pile of fish. Probably the most foolproof way to catch them right now, especially if you know they're in that area or in that zone, is to pitch a wacky rig Kamita, wacky rig pocket fry, your Senkos type baits. It just gets bit. It catches fish. And depending on where you're throwing it, you may decide to not do a wacky, and you might decide to take a Texas rig Senko and pitch it because it's going through, like I said, that gunk, that weird little mossy mat of stuff on these weeds that these fish are sitting in. That way you can fish it more effectively, more thoroughly, get through some of that stuff. Still present, for the most part, a similar looking, feeling presentation, weightless application. Easy to fish on a spinning rod if that's your cup of tea, and away you go. So that was one way. Chatterbait, catching a whole bunch of fish. Obviously, that's a crank and retrieve type bait. I found myself on the chatterbait, steady retrieve. I'm using jackhammers. I know they're spendy, but I've put it up to the test against all the other variations. You can get the $4 version. I totally get it. It just doesn't perform. I have zero ties to that brand. It just flat out catches fish. So I spend the money on the jackhammer unless Jack loses 2 or 3 in a morning of fishing, which happened the other day. Whatever, beside the point. Great way to catch fish. Next, I'm going to talk about one thing I've been leaning on a lot more lately, because we're dealing with some of these fish sitting in some of these more scummier, weedier, choked areas where the chatterbait, moving bait, bladed bait doesn't want to succeed as well. I've been fishing a swim jig, and I lean heavily on the all-terrain swim jig. I've been fishing this for a long time. I've been throwing a 5/16. I call it green pumpkin. This is actually called dirty gill. It's a new color coming out, but basically a green pumpkin variation. And I've been actually fishing that buzz bug from Mr. Twister on the back of that. You can kind of see there, it's got just a couple flappers that just kind of meanders through the water. I can swim it, I can dance it, I can slow retrieve it. And I caught them all of those ways. I caught it pitching, retrieving, I caught it hopping, I caught it just like a traditional jig fishing where I throw it and I kind of work it off the bottom. But this swim jig has been ecstatic on the fish this week. I'm fishing a 14 or a 17 pound fluorocarbon. I got a 7.6 medium heavy action rod. I'm still running that Chronarch CI4 bait caster. I love this reel, but we have Corrado DCs who've been throwing, and that's been my desired setup lately. Cool feature of this all-terrain swim jig is that trailer lock. I don't know if you can see that, but it holds that plastic in place. I can get probably 5, 8, 10 more fish out of a plastic because it's not sliding down. It's proprietary to all-terrain. That little piece of rubber there with the holes in it slides over the hook. Probably can't see it well on camera. Google allterraintackle.com. Slides over the hook and actually holds that plastic in place. And especially on a swim jig where I'm doing a lot of moving, casting, retrieving, ripping, working it through different things, that holds that plastic on longer. So that swim jig from All Terrain, Mr. Twister Buzz Bug combo has been dynamite on the fish, especially the larger ones for me lately. It's been a great presentation. Another presentation is I'm starting to pitch some jigs, and I'm not flipping, I'm not punching, but I'm taking 3/8 ounce all-terrain rattling AT jig. Got my trusty pocket craw on there. You'll see a big one posted, 5-pounder cut on this, so these are catching some fish. This happens to be a super bug. You can use, I've been using Okaboji craw, whatever color pattern you want. Little green pumpkin, a little bit of blue mixed in there. You can tell I have a theme. I like that green pumpkin theme, but I do add some color, some variation, whether it's the blue, whether it's chartreuse, and away we go. And I'm fishing a 7-foot medium heavy rod. I got Corrado bait caster on there. I got 30 or 40 pound, I'm not sure what on your braid, fluorocarbon leader, and away we go. That's a great bait just to kind of pitch around cover, especially I've mentioned it, not to be a dead horse. Starting to scum up, starting to get a little gross. I can flip that jig and pitch around and kind of work through it pretty easily. So I alluded to the fact that we're starting to do some summery patterns, and now I'm not talking 23-foot coontail. I'm talking 7, 8, 10, 12 feet of water where the weeds kind of sparse up. And I'm starting to fish a Ned rig. I'm fishing that Ned ringer. Love this bait. It was new on the market the last couple of years from Mr. Twister. Super supple. You can see it there. Holds up great. Dances in the water. Very finessey. I can do nothing with it, or I can work it back to the boat. I'm fishing a 7-foot medium action rod. One of my all-time favorite reels is that 3000 series Vanford from Shimano. It's got the little oversized arbor for a little castability. It's got that T-paddle handle on it. I am fishing a 15-pound Suffix 832 high-vis braid. And people are like, high-vis, can't the fish see it? Not when I put a 6-7 foot fluorocarbon leader on there. So I got an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader tied on there, and then I use a high-vis line so I can see what's going on. It gives me a little more advantage, especially some anglers that don't always feel the bite. They can watch that line tick and move, because a lot of times on this Ned, I'm pitching it, I'm doing nothing, they're picking it up, they're moving with it. And we know when bass fishing, hook sets are free, so away we go. So that's kind of my turn into summer slightly, is that Ned rig. I'm not fishing an overly heavy head. I'm fishing fairly lighter heads because I'm not fishing deep water. I haven't really fished anything deeper than about 12 feet here in the last week. That could change here, but right now I don't need some of the bigger heads, so it's still a very finessey approach. Let it fall. Biggest thing with the Ned rig is you cast it out there, don't flick the bail right away. Cast it out there, pull some line out, then flick the bail, so right where it hits the water, it goes straight down. It doesn't pendulum back to the boat. You want it to go straight down, let it hit the bottom, give it 2, 3, 4 seconds. 75% of your bites are going to be right there. Thud, hook sets are free, you bring it home. The other 15% are going to be on that first little pulse, and then the other 10% will be maybe somewhere working it back. But a lot of your bite strikes are going to come right away in the initial fall, right away in that first few feet. So pay attention to that. That's important to get bit. A lot of other ways to catch bass right now, but that was kind of our go-to. That's kind of what we've been doing here lately to catch fish. This is kind of how I plan to fish probably this entire week. Might implement a jig worm as well. You might see me throw a mighty head with a little longer jig worm. Not sure yet. We might do some Texas rig stuff. Not sure yet. We'll see what the week provides for us, but it's looking like chance of rain again every single day. More warm weather. It's feeling like summer, even though it's still spring, technically, I believe. Yeah. Last week of school for the kids, so if you're out there as parents, God bless. Summer's happening, and it's going to get really crazy. But get out there, have some fun. I'm going to spend some time on Tonka here. My next report will have some heavy Tonka influence to it, some Chisago influence to it. I will have some finger on the pulse on the bluegill, so I will talk a little bit of panfish next week. So keep an eye out for that. But if you have any questions, if you want me to address anything, by all means, ask me, hit me up. I can address it here, answer some questions in the next segment of this weekly feed. Or I'll just answer questions right down below if you ask me as well. Get you out there, catch some fish, have a whole lot of fun. Appreciate those who are watching. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this. I like giving these reports. Sometimes I might give away too much, but that's okay. I want you to catch fish and have as much fun as we do. Just not lose as many baits as we did this weekend, because that was going on hardcore. Get out there, have some fun, be safe, set some hooks.